Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange Podcast. Stories by leaders for leaders to help you raise the bar on your own excellence, to release the potential inside of you. Now, here's today's podcast. This is Hugh and Russ. This is the semi-annual review. Every now and then, Russ and I review some of the past episodes, and it's been about 4 or 5 months. And we try to do this 2 or 3 times a year, so it's not too long a show. But we want to capture the essence of some of the important shows that we've had and relay those to you, because we've had some really fine guests with some really fine learning experiences for me. Russ, what's your memory of the last few months?
Well, we've had people that talked about excellence on both a personal and professional level in all sorts of ways, and how to build an organization by actually building yourself, becoming a better leader, and really getting out there and reaching with people and building great systems. And that's what we talk about here on the Steady Diet. Here on the Nonprofit Exchange. And we've had some really brilliant people to come in and share that with us. And the first, since our last recap, was Rocio Perez, who Inventia Consulting. She's here in the Denver area. And her and I had just attended a Global Mind Education event where she's heavily involved, and she launched a book on becoming an unstoppable leader. But she was here to share some of her thoughts with us on that.
We've had some wise people, and you can't always measure wise in terms of years. I find that we've had some younger folks that have had wisdom beyond their years.
And Rocio is definitely one of them. She had a book launch. She had a successful book launch on Unstoppable, the 7 steps to becoming a more intentional leader. And she shared 5 of those with us here. But I think it's just to get a sense of what that was all involved. There's actually 7 of them, and she shared 5 of them with us.
Number 1 was getting to know yourself.
Getting to know yourself. Yes, that was the first one. And there's all sorts of ways to do that. But how do we get comfortable with ourselves and be comfortable with what's showing up? And what are some tools that we can use to better understand ourselves? And she built a whole course around that's available on helping people flesh out what their strengths are and some of their weaknesses are. Yeah. The second thing she talked about, as far as what makes a leader unstoppable, was to always learn. It's continuous learning. It's being clear on what it is that you know and what you don't know. And that's quite a thing for leaders to recognize, is that continuous learning, reinventing yourself, always looking for better ways to do what you do.
It's the book, The 7 Steps to Becoming a More Intentional Leader.
Yeah.
And this is Center Vision Leadership Foundation. I find that a lot of people don't understand leadership as well as Rocio did and does and teaches. And she's quite a fireball of an energy field. So the book is on Amazon, and you can find her book on Amazon. It's called 7 Steps to Becoming a More Intentional Leader. And I think the intentionality of what she knows and what she teaches was pretty remarkable. So when you go to thenonprofitexchange.org, it takes you to the summary page of what just happened, what's coming up, and then there's an archive. Watch the previous videos, and then you can go and watch a whole bunch of episodes. You can watch the video, and you can download them if you have a podcast app on your phone, either Stitcher or iTunes. You can find them, and either on the podcast site or on the website, you can find the script. We've done a transcription of every one of the interviews, and the transcription is out there on the website. So Rocio is the 5 top secrets of unstoppable leaders, and that was in June. So you go back and look at it. We don't number our episodes; we just do them chronologically, and you really can't lose. And then we had Jared Hanning. What do you remember about Jared Hanning? That was a fascinating interview.
Well, Jared talked about looking at how you work and getting more with less time. He presented the proposition that the less you do, the less work you do, the more money you make. And so he had a remarkable system for helping do that. And he was here to share that with us. And that was also in June. I went on to that system. I actually took an assessment that he walked me through. And this system of his shows you what your strong areas are and your weak areas are on a very, very deep level, so that you can become more effective at knowing where your bottlenecks are and clear them out. And he had a special special offer for nonprofits, as I recall, at that point in time. But he did offer to have me take that assessment, and it was fascinating where some of my weak spots and some of my strong spots were. And so having leaders work to their strengths is really critical, and having other people in your organization work to their strengths is really critical too. And this is a marvelous podcast for learning about some of the things you may have overlooked in terms of strengths and weaknesses for yourself and for your organization.
And he and I were resonating in our musicianship. He is a violist in the orchestra part-time, and he's a speaker as well. And he talked about overcoming his stage fright because he wanted to be perfect. It was a barrier to him being good. And so he had to conquer that stage fright. And one day he walked out and said, "I'm just going to go for it."
Yeah.
And I can relate to that. One day I just decided there's all these people looking at me and staring at me, and I've got to read my notes. And I said, "No, I'm not going to read my notes." And I threw them away. It was the best I ever did. I just looked at people and I presented like I knew what I was doing, Russell. So anyway, his site is mindsetperformance.co, and he's got a place. Is that MindScan? Is that him?
MindScan, yes. It's actually, and he calls it a mind scan, this assessment that you go through.
Yeah,
absolutely remarkable. And I still got mine somewhere. It's I don't know exactly where I found it, but it was fascinating. And when he builds a coaching program, a mentorship program for you, it's built around that scan. So no two clients of his are exactly alike. And what you work on is remarkable.
Now, he did have intentionality like Rocio. Now, doing less, I said, this sounds like snake oil. Do less, get more done. And he talks about his 3 pillars that allowed me to go from the hustle of working 40 hours a week, $50,000 a year, to a lifestyle that works and is sustainable of 20 hours a week and $100,000 a year. So you gotta go and listen. Got to go and listen to the interview. It's a pretty compelling interview, but he's very knowledgeable with his methodology. and very intentional. It's not that you sit back and wait for things to come to you. It's about
Well,
productivity, isn't it, Russ?
yeah, productivity is actually getting more done in less time with the tools that you have on hand. And there's a profit. You can profit in not just in monetary terms, but in other areas of your life. There's a profit factor by being able to leverage your time better, having everybody work to their strengths, and that's a piece of what we talk about in our events and in our training. It's working to those core strengths and finding partners to collaborate to fill those other gaps. So it's a remarkable training program, and you do well to go back and listen to this episode because it sounds so counterintuitive on the surface that a lot of people find it tough to digest. So this one's worth listening to, but given more than one listen, just to absorb all of the concepts that we covered.
You might want to take notes because there are little sound bites to come here and there. And you also can see his TEDx speech. He's been a TEDx speaker, and you can also see that on the website. Then we went to Suzanne Smith. We're into July now, I believe. Suzanne Smith. She was delightful. Still is, of course.
Yes, Suzanne worked a lot of years overseas in Africa and in third world countries, and is primarily a marketing person. But what she was talking about was having accountability for community organizations. And we were discussing very small NGOs that were supported in Africa and other parts of the world where people don't have access to technology. So it was about creating systems that empower you to come up with the right information, something that's so simple anyone can use it for these very small NGOs, most of whom don't even have access to technology that you and I take for granted, and really tell a compelling story and show the value that they're giving donors.
And it shows that you don't have to have a lot of fancy equipment or sophisticated computers in order to, she called this double entry bookkeeping. She has a methodology that she says is slam dunk easy, and it enables her clients to keep track of where they are and be accountable to their funding partners.
It is. And, it's really difficult for small grassroots organizations because they don't have the staff to really track everything. So by having a very simple system that people who are doing work on the ground can use and actually capture information that they can measure, creates that accountability. And that's a point of frustration for a lot of donors with very small organizations. So this is really important stuff to capture, and it's great to capture. And her system for training trainers and passing that information on to the end users is just great.
We want to know where the money's going. We want to know where the money went. And we tend to lose track of some of that, and it really hurts our income because funders don't know the value of what we've done because we can't track where the dollars went. And so her whole umbrella was about, if you want to feed more hungry people, you need to be able to have accountability in your systems and be able to have literacy, financial literacy. And we tend to shy away from that. Some of us that are creative, it seems difficult and boring, but she was not really an accountant by nature, but she worked with an accountant to develop the system and wanted to make it transparent, accountable, easy, and doable and practical. And I thought that was what we've seen so far with the three we've talked about so in June, and this is part of July, is um, they've reframed an old paradigm where people get stuck. So they've suggested, okay, um, there's another way to look at it. Um, so I asked her about overhead. You know, what's the thing about overhead? And she said, well, somebody has to keep the lights on. And when we're talking about overhead like it's a bad thing, we want to keep it within parameters. And so we do have, we augment the work that we do with volunteers. So it's not like a one person show. We're saving people in Tibet, she said, but we need a lot of people to do it. Takes the doctors to run the clinic, but it takes a whole lot of other people to do other things. So the salary is overhead, but really the salary is service to the community. So there's this thing of overhead that sometimes, well, it's good that we're not spending 90% of the money on ourselves, but it's thrown out of proportion. What did you remember out of that?
Well, you know, a big part of Suzanne's frustration in putting that system together was that she wasn't an accountant, but that when she went to donors, she couldn't give them the best numbers or really measure the impact. And so when you talk in terms of the work that nonprofits do, there's what we call a social profit, and it goes beyond just the money, but it's showing how effective that the folks delivering the service are. And it's a total value proposition. The whole package is about the value that people bring. And by having that simplified system, as far as the numbers go, it freed people up to really talk about the mission, to talk about people who are actually getting the services, so they can focus on the social aspects, but still have enough numerical data to meld into the story to show that impact. And it's critical to be able to show both. And those were the things that she had in mind as she was putting that system together.
And then the next week, you and I decided and I don't know anybody that's got a bigger library than Russell Dennis, but you're always reading. And when we talk about a book, you pull it out of your back pocket, it looks like. So some of the books, you highlighted a few and I highlighted a few. You highlighted, I believe, the guide to proposal writing from the
Foundation Center. Yes, the Foundation Center has the best database on programs running. They cover private foundations, businesses. They talk about, they have everything in there. What's funded, who's funding it, where their geographic focus is. And they have a lot of training on writing proposals and on grant strategy. And this guide to fundraising that they wrote, it's been around for quite a long time. And I've read some other books and gone through some other courses. But this particular book is the best one I've found on grant writing yet. And their clients, or the people that they list, are primarily private foundations. And there's a systematic process for going through and capturing all of the pieces that go into a proposal and writing with impact and making your message clear, everything from the need to how you're going to measure the results. And it's a phenomenal book. They talk about strategy. They talk about how to go about searching. Of course, they got the Foundation Center online database, and they'd like for you to use that. But that is the most robust database out there. I've used a few others, and they really have a great product. If you're serious about grant writing, you want this book on your bookshelf so that you can refer to it again and again and again.
And I highlighted book called Extraordinary Relationships by my leadership coach, Roberta Gilbert. It's on the work of Murray Bowen, a psychiatrist, MD. And it's about knowing yourself as a leader. We set up problems as a leader. We show up anxious and create anxiety in the community. and we're not aware of what we bring to the community. And this whole premise is that we show up, any of us show up in any group situation, just like we showed up in our family of origin. And that to me was a fascinating reframing, Russell, because I
She
am.
really took work that was done by.
Huh?
She took work that was done by Murray Bowen, who came up with the Bowen concepts, and really brought it to life to show how these family dynamics play into the roles that we find ourselves filling in every situation.
Roberta is a regular contributor, as is Russell Dennis, to the nonprofit Performance 360 magazine. And one of her articles I remember was organizations are just like big families. And we do show up, and really we can't change other people. We can change ourselves, and other people respond to us. And they want to push back the way it was. They want to change back the way we were. But we really need to forge a new culture, and we model a culture, and people respond to that. And so we can't change other people. I'll repeat, we can change ourselves. Now, you also reviewed one called the Nonprofit Budget Builder Toolkit by Mark Mullen.
Wow, this is a very nuts and bolts book. We talk about strategy here at Cinevision, but a big piece of really being able to get that strategy on legs is to really know how much you're going to bring in, how much you need, how much it costs, what people need to invest. And in my years working with the Mi'kmaq Tribal Nation, one of the most stressful times a year was when we were putting budgets together, because we had to justify those needs. A lot of times the needs were increasing. So we had to be able to quantify and qualify what we had done and really start looking at estimates of what it was going to cost to bring our programs up to the level that they needed to be brought up to. And so this is something that takes a non-accountant and really sort of shows them step by step how to put a budget together and how to come up with some of these numbers so that you can match the investment required with your strategy. And it's a really great book, because it just walks you step by step through that process, which for a lot of people is intimidating if they don't have an accounting background.
Oh my word. Yeah. Yeah. So the budget, what do you find are the deficits that this book speaks to?
Well, in terms of how to look at your revenue and classify your revenue, what type of revenue it is. And I'm not talking strictly in terms of the source, but more in terms of how the revenue functions. And there are four basic categories. There's stuff that's pure profit. There's some of the programs, like if you have mission-based revenue, that's profit. You have some other types of revenue that some programs are partially self-supporting. So there's a combination of mission-based revenue, grants,